Hello, everyone. Casper Stockham here with I Am Love Builders, and I have the privilege of interviewing a friend of mine. His name is Matt Melvin, and he has a very interesting story and background that we want to share, and also talk about his book. Now, Matt is on with us. Matt, are you there?
I'm here.
So, Matt is the author of a book called Bullied Behind Bars. A gay Christian Trump supporter goes to prison. A memoir of the chronicles of his journey through adversity, faith, identity, and redemption. All right, Matt. So we're going to start from the beginning because that's a mouthful. That's a lot going on there. So tell us. We got 30 minutes to unpack this. So tell us, who is Matt? How, where'd you grow up?
I was born in Lowell, Massachusetts. Lived in Lowell until 1988 when my father got a job as a director at Franklin County Home Health in Vermont.
Okay, so you grew up there. Was it a fairly normal childhood, or what was going on?
I wouldn't call it fairly normal, although normal is really an obtuse term. There's no real such thing as normal.
Right.
Normal is what's within somebody's perspective.
Correct. I mean, but were there things that you were growing up and you're like, okay, this is not cool, or I mean, was there any thing? When I was growing up, I actually grew up in a middle class household. Both my parents were there. I thought that I was poor, but I would go to other places and find out I wasn't so poor. But we owned our home. We had two cars. We had my parents, I should say, had rental properties. It was fairly quote unquote normal. But it was what it was. So when you were growing up, what was that like for you?
My parents have both been married for over 50 years, two cars. I was bullied throughout almost all of my childhood, from the individual Brian who lived next to me to other people that were in school with me.
Okay, and why were you bullied?
I was overweight. I was different.
Ah,
I didn't fit into that normal, quote unquote,
right.
category. I have autism. I'm on the Asperger's spectrum.
Okay.
I come to the world differently than others do. And
Mm-hmm.
what you learn about bullies is bullies always find what they perceive as a weak target,
Right.
and they manipulate somebody to do something that they want them to do, and they think that they will get satisfaction out of that. In fact, they actually feel worse.
Right. No doubt about that. Okay, so that's what I was alluding to. All right, so now you were bullied because of your weight, and when did that kind of start to change as far as your weight? And have were you bullied throughout your entire childhood up until high school and all that, or when did the weight start to come off?
The weight didn't start coming off until after I did my second sentence jail sentence in federal prison.
Okay, so you were even overweight as you went into the prison system. Now we're kind of getting a little bit ahead, but that was even an issue going into prison, right?
Yes.
Oh,
Although
okay.
my weight came down each time I went to prison, what would happen is I would come out and then I would overeat because I didn't have
Ah,
that ability when I was in prison. I mean, you can overeat, but
mm-hmm,
there's only so much food you're given in prison.
mm-hmm. Okay, so now you're yes, that's true. But I've also heard that a lot of people eat better in prison than they do on the outside because there is, they do try to, they're not trying to like quote unquote starve you to death in most U.S. prisons. Now, in overseas, who knows what's going on? But U.S. prisons are fairly, they try to give you a couple meals a day or whatever. Um, but you mentioned
It's not good
returning
food
back.
at all.
Say again.
It's not good food at all.
Well, no, it's not nutritious, right?
Right.
No
But
doubt.
you have to think about it. On the outside, we as have the opportunity to eat whatever we want
Whatever we want. Yeah. 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 So when
and
you would get
how much we want to consume each day.
right,
And
right.
believe it or not, overeating is an addiction.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And being locked up and being restricted on what you could eat and how much and everything else, and then you get free again. You're like, Psh, I'm eating everything now, right? You can't. Yeah. I get that. I get that. Okay. So what? So what happened in your life to start you down the road to where you even wound up in prison? I mean, how did that even come about?
I worked at a car dealership, Freedom Nissan in Shelburne, South Burlington, Vermont. They didn't pay me my commissions. I impulsively tried to sell one of their cars, got caught. Instead of going through the mental health court, Jeffrey Crawford and Bob Wolford both decided I didn't meet the criteria and went through the traditional court.
Hmm.
Came out with a record, couldn't pass the background check. I used other people's information to work. I did the work. The government pursued me for 6 years and finally got a grand jury indictment against me in 2016.
And that led to the first prison.
No, that's the second one. The first time was
Second.
because of the car.
Oh, okay. First time because of the car. And how long did you serve the first time?
18 months.
18 months.
Same sentence, same judge, both the federal and the state case. Welcome to Vermont.
Okay, so 18 months the first time. You get out for how long were you out?
I got out in 2005 and I went back in 2016.
11 years you were out. Okay, so what led to the second time going back in?
In 2009, I used other people's information to work. I did the work. I couldn't pass a background check.
Okay, so I guess I'm trying. Okay, because that's at least 10 years or so that you weren't in prison. What were you doing during that time?
I want to first say that the crime occurred in 2009.
Mm-hmm.
The government pursued me for 6 years and finally got a grand jury indictment against me.
For 6 years prior to 2009.
No, for 2016 is when the government indicted me. The crime occurred in 2009.
Oh, okay, I got you. All right, the 6 years. All right, got you. Okay. So, all right, so you're in the second time, you get out. How long did you serve the second time?
16 months, 10 institutions, 4 states, and then a month and a half in a halfway house.
Wow. Okay, that's a lot of institutions. How was that? Why were there so many institutions? Why were there so many trains?
I was isolated. The guards and the inmates would conspire against me and say that I tried to proposition people, and then they would put me in solitary confinement. And while the institution might have had my body, they didn't have my mind. And I used that time for what I call Bible boot camp, where I was going to every single Bible study that was available, Jehovah's Witness, Christian Science, Scientology, Catholicism, Christians, and reading my Bible, praying, fasting, exercising, making my bed. All of these disciplines have helped me to become the man I am today.
Okay, so you started studying the different religions, as you mentioned, and what kind of led you? Because I've been a Buddhist before, and I've studied some of the other religions, but not to the level I believe that you have. So, what brought you back to Christianity from studying all those different religions? How did you come back to, or how did you hone in on Christianity?
Reading the Bible, understanding that there's only one God, there's not many gods, and just understanding the history of the Bible, that there is no way that this can be manufactured or made up. There is so much scientific history that backs every single thing up.
Right, but some
can do that.
Yeah, but I agree because I'm Christian as well. But some of the other religions would push back and say, "Well, we were around even before Christianity, or like like Buddhism or whatever." What would you say to that?
They may have been around. I don't believe that they've been around as long as Christianity.
Okay.
And there's no geological evidence to support that.
Okay, so right, as in a physical location, like the Mount Sinai, whatever kind of things,
Right.
and even I've known this for years, but they even are now finally officially talking about Noah's Ark, right? The location for Noah's Ark. But I've known about that site for many years, but now they're starting to make it kind of like mainstream, talking about it. So things like that is what you're referring to.
Absolutely. There's so much history. There's so many theologians that can back up everything that's going on, and it's very next to impossible to discredit anything in the. You can't discredit anything in the Bible. Everything that is said can be backed up, and that's what I want to encourage everybody, all your listeners. When you make a statement, make sure that you can back up whatever statement you made with facts, not just what I would call judgment or
Right.
I think.
That's interesting. So, all right, now, so you're in prison. You actually have, or you go through this really intense study of the different religions, and you really start to get really strong on your Christian faith. So when you get out of prison now, with all this knowledge, what does that Matt look like? What does that Matt do?
Starting to talk to people, preaching, getting to know people, talking about my redemption. I had a near-death experience in August 2015 where I was almost killed by an out-of-control driver on 495. I was going 72 miles an hour, which was fairly slow. I've been known to go significantly faster.
Slow for you, but was it the speed limit?
Well, Casper, I'm a fearless guy. And
Okay.
I think it's important to understand that there's a balance between being fearless and being fearful. Okay? You have to
Okay.
have a balance. Otherwise, the human being will do whatever it wants to do. So there's a balance. And remember,
Okay.
that fear is false evidence appearing real.
I get that, but I'm not really chastising you because I go fast as well. But there's also recklessness that plays into all these things. Like when it's snowing and ice on the road, I don't go the same speed that I go when the roads are dry, right? So you're okay. So this accident happened. How does the accident happen?
No, the accident never happened. I was saved. I was protected. And that's the moment I believe that God was saying and drawing a line in that sand saying, you're either going to do my will or you're going to continue to do your own will. You're going to lie, cheat, and steal. And I didn't want that for myself. What I did was I did the 12 steps, Big Bill's 12-step program of stealing. Those 12 steps can apply to any addiction. It doesn't just have to be drugs or alcohol. But just like everything in life, it's not a one and done. It is a lifestyle. All of those steps apply to anything. Making amends, making a list of people that you've wronged. All of those are amazing steps towards the redemption.
And
Because
where did you?
in order to have God, there has to be acknowledgement that my way isn't right. I need to modify it. And I tell people all the time, it's like when you go to get your car repaired, you have to get your car repaired 100% to the manufacturer. It's not a negotiation. Well, just 30% today, and I'll come back and do the stuff. It's either 100% or it's zero. That is the way it is with God. You cannot just surrender part of your life. We have to surrender the entire part of our existence of our life over to God. Otherwise, we will continue to live in sin.
So I totally agree with that. Was this 12-step program something that you developed, or was it a program that you went through
No.
through
It's Big Bill's 12-step program for overcoming alcoholism.
Okay.
But those 12 steps can apply to anything.
Sure.
They don't just have to be alcohol. Any addiction you have, those 12 steps apply. Overeating, pornography, whatever it is,
Right.
the phone.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of phone addictions going on today, no doubt about it. Social media, right, and all that. Okay, so when did the book come about? I'm gonna pull up a image of the book. When did you decide to write this book?
I wrote the book when I was in prison. I was journaling. I was writing my story. I viewed myself as, Anne Frank. I wanted to share my story because I don't want to have anybody else go through what I went through. And
Mm-hmm.
my book was the unraveling of all the masks that I had worn throughout my life. I was one person at work, one person at home. I didn't know who I was because I was trying to appease the world and I was miserable inside.
So I don't know if I heard when you actually wrote the book though. When you came out of prison for the
Yes, the
second
book
time?
came out in 2022.
Okay, 2022.
But it took me
All right.
6 years to finally get it out. It took a long time to go through the process because I had
Yes.
literally had hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pages, and I had to consolidate them down.
Consolidate it down. No doubt about that. All right, so when you were in prison, it sounds like you were even bullied in prison for your weight and other things.
I was
Uh,
bullied because I was writing, I was journaling what was going on. I was at one of the institutions, my journal entries were actually confiscated
hmm,
by the guards,
right.
and I was putting a target on my back. And if you look at my life, I have constantly done things because I'm fearless. So
Hmm.
whether you look at the car or whether you look at the journal entries, it's this fearless mentality. And sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad, but there needs to be a healthy balance between being fearful and fearless.
Yeah, yeah. Now
And
I know.
one side is very unhealthy and sinful.
Sure, sure. So we've spoken outside of this interview, and I was asking you some questions, and we were just kind of going back and forth, and I was curious about the title the title or label. You call yourself a gay Christian, and I was like, okay, so help me understand that. And your answer I thought was really good. So can you repeat that for the audience? How do you square being a gay Christian?
As long as you are not engaging in sin. Sex outside of marriage is sin,
Correct.
whether it's homosexual or heterosexual.
Right.
So as long as you don't act on it, then there's no issue. It's when you act on it that it becomes sin.
Right.
It's a little bit
So,
different when it comes to lust, right? Because
right.
lust already comes to the mind and then you act on it.
Right.
Because somebody doesn't just lust for somebody of the opposite or same sex. It first comes into the mind. And
All right.
the other thing that I think is important, is that when Eve and David sinned, they were always idle. Eve should have been with Adam. David should have been in the garden, out in the fields. When we are idle, we are 99% more likely to sin than if we're not. That's why it is important to be busy doing
Yeah.
productive things.
Productive things. Yeah. In my book Mastering Adam, I talk about the first commandment God gave Adam was to work, get to work, right? To not be idle. So you're absolutely correct on that. And then you talk about being a Trump supporter. So how did that come about?
I volunteered for him in 2016, knocking doors in New Hampshire,
Oh, okay.
and I was a Democrat, and I had this realization that you can't be a Democrat and be a Bible and be of God, be of Jesus, because here's the number one reason:
Hmm.
every socialist believes in pro-choice, and
Right.
you can't be for God if you're pro-choice. Because think about it, God came in the form of a fetus.
Right.
So why would it make sense that God would allow you to kill a fetus? That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and they use terms to try to make it less human. It's a fetus, but the definition of fetus is a human baby. Right. Yeah.
And if you
So
think, if I have seen how children are aborted. It is
mhm.
a terror. You're ripping apart parts of a child. It's
Yeah.
disgusting.
Yeah.
Listen, you wouldn't even want that done to your animal, let alone a child.
Correct. Correct. Yeah, we have dehumanized humanity in children. We have more protection for fish, in streams than we do for human life.
We have more protections for sharks and alligators. Do you know how
Yeah.
many millions of alligators are in Florida? We don't need all those alligators.
Yeah, yeah, but they're protecting stuff. They have certain times of year you can do the hunt or whatever, but other than that, they're protected throughout the rest of the year. And then they complain about the overpopulation of them, and now they have a problem with large snakes, the pythons and anacondas, yeah, water mocks, all that. Wow, this is fascinating. So now fast forward to today. The Matt of today. It sounds like your message is very much one focused on spreading the word about the gospel. Being that servant, that Christ talks about, that God talks about, and sharing that message as often as possible. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think, in order to be a good servant of Jesus Christ, you need to do the work. You need to be reading your Bible. You need to be praying. Look, most people, non-priests, spend less than 2 minutes praying, and most pastors spend less than 4 minutes. I don't believe the Bible ever says spend 2 minutes. It says pray without ceasing.
Without ceasing, yeah.
Where does it say only spend 2 minutes?
Well, it doesn't.
Jesus went to the cross to die for my sins. The least I could do is pray for him for at least an hour. At least.
Well, yeah. He asked his disciples to pray for him before he was turned over to the authorities and stuff. He came back twice. He said, "Are you guys sleeping? An hour. I just asked you to pray for an hour." So, yeah, that's fascinating.
The other thing that I think is important in prayer is oftentimes we want to give a grocery list. And that's not the way it works. The first prayer, there's 5 prayers. The first is thanksgiving. Be thankful.
Right.
Be thankful. I have to be thankful today of the number of excuses that people had why they couldn't make appointments. I have to be thankful. That is hard. That's hard for me, who is meticulously on time, doesn't care for late people, doesn't like excuses, because excuses are nothing but a lie.
Right.
If you are full of excuses, I encourage you to drain the swamp and get rid of all those excuses and be present and do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah. Well, folks, you can get Matt's book on Amazon. It's called Bullied Behind Bars, A Gay Christian Trump Supporter Goes to Prison. So, Matt, we have a couple minutes left here. What would be some parting thoughts you want to leave with the folks regarding just... It could be anything you want to share as a parting message to the folks.
Find a good tribe of people like-minded that are Christians, that are living the lifestyle. Not because there's a lot of people that say that they are what I would call CINOs, Christian in name only, and they only need God when it's dire straits. And find people that can hold space for you, that will be, and that's really important to ask somebody. If you have a pressing issue that's going to weigh on somebody, ask them, are you able to hold space for me? Rather than dumping a whole bunch of stuff that the person can't handle. And what happens is that person who can't handle it, guess what they do? They gossip. They talk about you behind your back. And that's a sin. Gossiping is a sin, folks.
Right.
Nothing good happens with gossip.
Absolutely. Those are wise words, my friend. Wise words indeed. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate you kind of sharing, being vulnerable and sharing your story with our audience. I think it's one that they definitely need to hear, and I think they should consider going to the Amazon to order your book. I think it's one that it's a story they need to hear, because there's a lot to unpack in there. But at the end of the day, being present with God, being present with the Holy Spirit, being present with your faith is probably the most important thing that we could do. So I appreciate your time, Matt, and folks, we will see you on the next interview. Bye-bye for now.